So we will start the event. Thank you, everybody, for coming to the March 2023 Renewable Heat Now Power Hour. We are going to be talking tonight about the New York heat bill and a bunch of amazing actions that are coming up, some of which we will be able to do tonight. And if you are just joining us, make sure to put your name, where you are joining us from tonight, and also what your superpower is. And we will get started. My name is Kim Frachek. I am the director of Sane Energy Project. We are one of the 20 organizations who are members of the Renewable Heat Now campaign. I'm just going to go through the agenda tonight for us all. We're going to just do a brief refresher on who Renewable Heat Now is and what our goals are. We're going to talk about our strategy and our timeline for this legislative session. We're going to have a focus on the New York heat bill tonight, and we will go deeper into what that is and why we want to pass it this session. And that is one of the 3 bills of our legislative package this session. We're going to have an action to call the governor tonight and leave her a nice little message from us. And then we're going to sign up for a virtual lobby day and an in-person lobby day. And just, you'll see lots of cats in our presentation tonight because we have a new fun meme that's going out called Renewable Heat Meow. So if you have a cat and you would like to put a picture of your cat on the social media, always put in Renewable Heat Meow and we will all be able to see everybody's cats. Just quickly, Renewable Heat Now is a campaign. There's about 20 organizations across the state who are working to educate and influence our legislature and our state agencies to adopt ground and air source heat pumps and thermal energy networks. We have been working, I guess, for about 7 years now together, and we've accomplished quite a lot at the Public Service Commission and also in our state legislature. We are focused on legislation that is aiming to reduce emissions from buildings. And the reason why we are focused on buildings is because they're the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in our entire state, because our buildings are burning fossil fuels for things like cooking or hot water. And many of us on this call are probably very aware that methane is a terrible gas for greenhouse gas warming and our climate emissions. So we want to be able to reduce fracked gas from our energy and heating systems. We do have a legislative package of 3 bills, which is the New York heat bill, which we're going to talk about tonight, formerly called the Gas Transition Energy Affordability Act. And we also have the All Electric Buildings Act, which we've had a power hour for that just focused on that before, and the Energy Efficiency, Equity, and Jobs Act. And tonight we are going to focus specifically, as I mentioned, just on the New York Heat Act. This is some of the logos of the organizations that are working really hard to make sure that we pass these laws this year, because our main goal is making sure that we have a great transition for our labor force and our economy can become a renewable economy as opposed to an extractive economy, our health and safety, our energy affordability, and climate change. Those are the reasons why we are targeting these pieces of legislation to pass. Last time we met, we were a little bit earlier in the timeline. I just highlighted for you here the place where we actually are right now in our timeline. So we know in early January, the governor gave a state of the state, and she put out her executive budget, and we met shortly after that last month. This month, right now, the what's called one house budgets, where the Senate and the Assembly come together and they deliberate and they debate and they meet with each other about what they are going to be putting in their budget. That's due on April 1st. And then, so that's what's happening right now in the Assembly and the Senate. So these are all negotiations. This is where we are right now. This is the time that we're trying to convince legislators to put our bills in their budget, to bake them into the plan of what we're going to be doing moving forward. So that's the goal that we have now. And that's why we really want to have a lot of lobby visits and legislator visits, advocacy days and things like that, because it's sort of time crunch right now. So we're glad that all of you are on here tonight. Just to reiterate who we're targeting, we are targeting our leaders, which is the governor, Kathy Hochul, and the Speaker of the Assembly, Carl Hastie, and the Senate Majority Leader, Andrea Stewart-Cousins. There's also committee chairs that we want to target on the Energy, Environment, Housing, and Health committees. We also want to target the Black, Puerto Rican, Hispanic, and Legislative Caucus headed by Michelle Salages. And then we also have a number of Democrats across the state who have a very narrow margin of approval, and they may have challengers coming up. So a lot of times when people are having narrow margins of their support, they're a little bit more movable on passing more progressive legislation. And I'm going to pass it over to Avni right now from Alliance for a Green Economy, who's going to do a deep dive for us on the New York Heat Act.
All right, thank you so much, Kim. And thanks everyone for joining this evening for our monthly Power Hour. We have a super fun and super awesome topic now, the New York Heat Act, which is very exciting for many of us who have been working on this since last year. It used to be called the Gas Transition and Affordable Energy Act, and it's been modified and updated so that it can encompass just so many more of the changes that we need to get off of gas already. So the reason we're doing this deep dive is because we know it's one of the more complex bills and that legislators sometimes need help understanding some of the ins and outs. So hopefully by the end of today, by the end of these slides, you'll feel a little more equipped to explain this really big bill in just a few minutes. And the big question is really why. So I'm just going to quickly go over why does New York need this legislation? And the short answer is that New Yorkers are forced every day to subsidize deadly fracked gas infrastructure through their energy bills. And this leads to obviously a number of negative public health outcomes and negative financial outcomes. It's just bad for our wallets. So we're going to get a little bit more into the cost issues later, but it's important for legislators to know that our gas system is expensive, antiquated, and just does not align with our 2019 landmark climate law, the CLCPA, or the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. Next slide, please. All right, so the big deal about New York Heat is that it would eliminate billions of dollars in subsidies for gas hookups or fossil fuel infrastructure, which we'll get deeper into later. But the main takeaway is that all of us as utility customers pay the utilities to give away gas hookups for free. And we just cannot keep subsidizing fossil fuel infrastructure with public dollars if we are going to affordably make the transition to clean heating and cooling. The New York Heat Act would also enable neighborhood scale building decarbonization. And this is really such an important topic because buildings are New York's largest source of greenhouse gas emissions. And if we are going to fulfill our climate law mandates, we really need a holistic way to tackle our buildings emissions. And so by enabling whole neighborhoods to switch to geothermal district heating, it's really the most affordable way for whole communities and neighborhoods to do this instead of a house by house, one at a time basis. And so going forward, when gas utilities try to build more gas infrastructure, they're actually going to have to consider geothermal networks for clean heating and cooling on a neighborhood scale instead. And finally, the bill also ensures that low to moderate income families do not have to pay excessively expensive energy bills, because LMI families are really hit the hardest by our rising energy costs. The way that we pay our utilities is regressive, so low income households pay a larger percentage of their income towards energy than affluent households. And so this legislation really requires that LMI households do not have to pay more than 6% of their income on energy. All right, so again, getting back a little bit into the why, we really need our utilities to be responsible for fulfilling the climate law, because currently, though we have this amazing, wonderful climate law from 2019 that so many amazing advocates probably on this call worked on, the utilities actually are not mandated by law to consider how they are going to fulfill those climate law mandates, even though they're such a big piece of it. And so the New York Heat Act explicitly mandates this through a number of different proceedings. And we'll talk a little bit more about those proceedings later. The New York Heat Act also tackles our state's largest source of greenhouse gas emissions, as I mentioned earlier, which are buildings. And our buildings really produce more local air pollution than any other state in the country, which researchers have found resulting in very negative health outcomes, such as increased rates of asthma, especially among children, and heart disease. So if we want to reach our climate law mandates, especially in disadvantaged communities, for environmental and climate justice reasons, we have to reduce emissions and pollution from buildings. And finally, the bill updates the regulation of gas utilities, which hasn't happened in a long time. We have new climate mandates, so it just makes sense that we need new regulatory mandates for the utilities to follow as well. All right, so a few other things that the bill does: it facilitates a just transition for workers by ensuring that gas pipeline workers can transition into geothermal careers. So a fun fact that you can share with legislators: the Climate Action Council, one of the working groups, conducted a study and found that the clean energy sector in New York will create 189,600 new jobs by 2040. So we're facing this moment where we can ensure that displaced workers does not mean workers without career pathways or without livelihoods or stranded workers. We can ensure that gas workers with areas of expertise are transitioned into careers where they can help build geothermal networks as well. And so there's a lot of opportunity, and the bill creates these guardrails to ensure that workers are protected. It also creates certainty for gas utilities and their operations as well as their customers, because it will force them to create a plan and mandate specific planning processes that also enshrine customer protections into law. So happily, by aligning the laws that govern utilities with our climate law, we're not going to waste any more critical time and resources and money on expensive polluting infrastructure that just is going to become a stranded asset in 2050. And the reason I say that is because our climate law requires significant emissions reductions, which are just not possible if we are still largely dependent on a fracked gas system. So the more money that we put into gas infrastructure now, the more we are throwing that money away. And this issue significantly will impact low income ratepayers because our utility rates are regressive, as I mentioned. And we're still, as more and more customers switch away from gas heating towards heat pumps, the more people who get off of gas, the more that people left on that gas system are going to have to pay ever increasing costs, because they're the ones who pay for the gas infrastructure. We're the ones who pay for the gas infrastructure, not the utilities. And so fewer customers mean higher rates overall for those people still left on the gas system. And so we have to ensure that we're prioritizing low income households to switch away first, so that they're not hit with that utility death spiral, as it's called. Not to be morbid about it. So to get into some of the little more wonky aspects of the bill, the New York Heat Act would actually empower our Public Service Commission or our utilities regulator to exercise more power in directing utilities to comply with our 2019 landmark climate law, as I mentioned, the CLCPA. So when it does this by actually mandating a new policy proceeding or a new arena in which utilities actually have to make a plan for achieving the climate justice and emission reduction targets in the law. And it makes this a core regulatory responsibility so that the PSC can't just defer to the utilities and neglect this aspect of their jobs any longer. All right, so we talked a little bit about how the bill reforms the use of public subsidies, but in short, gas utilities utilize ratepayer dollars every day to grant buildings free gas connections to their gas infrastructure. And they do this because building gas infrastructure makes their shareholders money. So they have this perverse incentive to continue building out polluting infrastructure. So as ratepayers, we're saying no more free gas hookups, no more public subsidies for gas infrastructure, no more polluting infrastructure. Unfortunately, it's not been that easy to stop them giving away these hookups because it's actually required by our public service law. So a big part of this bill actually removes that requirement while also mandating that New Yorkers are reliably served by these utilities and not discriminated against in the service of because that is also something that we see is disparate outcomes for disadvantaged communities versus affluent communities and how they're served by the utilities. The bill also modifies public service law to facilitate those neighborhood scale transitions to thermal energy networks that I mentioned earlier, so that whole neighborhoods can affordably make the switch to geothermal heat pumps for clean heating and cooling. And finally, as I mentioned, the gas infrastructure that we're paying into today just becomes a stranded asset in the future, far before the end of its operating life. So it truly is just the definition of throwing money in the garbage, throwing our resources in the garbage by continuing to build out gas infrastructure. And it changes public service law to recognize that alternatives to gas infrastructure have to be considered when the utility is trying to build that new gas infrastructure. It would make utility bills more affordable by capping energy burdens at 6% so that no household is paying more than 6% of their income on energy bills. It requires effective investments into energy efficiency by the utilities. And protects low to moderate income customers that really need those energy efficiency investments in their homes in order to make a transition to pollution-free appliances affordably. And finally, again, as I mentioned, that 6% cap on energy bills we anticipate will be extremely helpful for low to moderate income customers. And I believe now I am passing it to Andra to talk a little bit about an action coming up that you can take.
Thank you, Avni. So with your help and participation, everyone, we have been working nonstop to try to get the 3 bills of the Renewable Heat Now package into the one-house budgets. We collected memos of support for the New York Heat Act and delivered them to all the Democratic legislators this week in person, the whole pile of memos from 106 organizations across the state. And legislators were kind of impressed. And we've even received 5 additional sign-ons to co-sponsor that legislation in the past 2 days while we were doing this effort in Albany. And we hope that there will be more sign-ons as co-sponsors coming as a result of that. So bill memos are one way to win legislator support. Zoom meetings with legislators are another great way. So we've planned a March 14th virtual advocacy day for the New York Heat Act. And people have been signing up to participate and can still sign up through, I'd say, midday Monday. And there's the link in the chat. So far, we have 62 people who registered for this advocacy day. And so far we have, next slide, please, 8 virtual meetings plus 1 in-person meeting scheduled. And we still have more meetings rolling in. So everyone who signs up for this virtual advocacy day will get a meeting at the time that they indicated, time or times they indicated that they're available. And some will get meetings with their legislators and others won't, and that will be fine. We would really like to have some constituents in each meeting, preferably people that the legislators have not yet heard from. And for that, we need your help. If you have friends or members of your organization in any of these districts with any of these legislators in the chart, please reach out to them and urge them to sign up for a meeting on the 14th. They don't have to have any prior experience with this kind of advocacy. We can connect with them and help them figure out how they will fit in and dovetail in with the rest of the group and make a statement. And Lisa Marshall is going to be sending each person who registers for the virtual advocacy day their meeting or list of meetings and the one pager for the New York Heat Act and any other last minute details, and that will be going out on Monday. And now I welcome Denise of New York Communities for Change to tell you about our March 22nd mobilization.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for that little intro. So yeah, I know a bunch of folks on this call actually participated in our last lobby day, which was on January 24th. We had almost 200 people in the Capitol building. We had folks, so many folks gathered around the $1 million staircase that we couldn't really all fit. And then we broke up and went up to lobby meetings, in which resulted in a ton of new co-sponsors for our legislative package. In particular, one of the focuses that New York Communities for Change is working on is the All Electric Building Act, along with New York Heat and EJA. And we think this trio of bills are the things that are really going to get fossil fuels kicked out of buildings. We want to stop connecting fossil fuels to new buildings. We want to transition fossil fuels out of existing buildings. And we want to make sure that the transition that happens is affordable, and that we're also giving folks who really need the help, especially low-income folks, extra support, funding, and to be able to do things like weatherization to reduce their utility bills, as well as enable them to transition more easily off of fossil fuels. So it's a trio of packages. It's the thing that's going to get at cutting emissions out of buildings, which is, as Kim mentioned, the greatest source of emissions in the state. And what we really want to do with the following in-person event is that we want to celebrate our climate champions. So we're going to go back to Albany, and our action that we have planned is different than last time. Last time we had a rally, and then we went to one at like group meetings and lobby meetings. We want to again end up taking over the Capitol building and line the halls. And we want to cheer out our climate champions as they walk into the chambers for session that day. And we want to pull folks who are not yet co-sponsors on our bills and lobby them in person right then and there. And I think they'll also be encouraged by all of the cheering and enthusiasm we have for our climate champions. Our goal that day is to really be seen and be heard at the Capitol. We want the legislature and the governor to know that they need to include these bills in the budget package, and we want them passed immediately. So we want to make that loud and clear. We had almost 200 people in the Capitol on the 24th of January, and we're hoping to get another 200 people to come out on March 22nd. It's going to be a really fun day. We're going to be doing a lot of taking pictures with legislators, posting them on social media. We're going to be doing chants and call outs. And it's going to be a really exciting day because we want to send a clear message to the legislature that these are really important bills. This is the way that we're going. We need to be making the transition to get fossil fuels out of buildings and really have a huge impact on climate. and it's really on them to take action now. And the folks who are leading, our elected officials that are really leading on these things, are going to get a huge burst of support from all of us to make sure we bring home these bills in the budget this year. So if you'd like to join us, it's on Wednesday, March 22nd. We will be, we've made arrangements. I think we have some links where you can sign up that are now in the chat. So you can sign up for the day of event that's on March 22nd. We're also going to be holding an in-depth training on March 15th. That link is in the chat as well. So if you sign up for that, we're actually going to go through all of the things that we're doing on the 22nd. We're going to do a training on how to find your legislator. We want to walk through the plan with folks who are attending so everyone knows where to be and where to go and when they need to be there. We're also going to have marshals set up so to help guide folks. We just want to keep it organized. We're also going to do a deeper dive on all of the bills again. So I know folks who've been on the power hours before are very familiar now with the New York Heat Act, with that amazing presentation from Avni. And there was a power hour on all electric buildings earlier this year. But we just want to run down where we are on all of those bills, some of the politics around that, because we are hopeful that the Assembly and Senate budget proposals will be out next week. And we should have a clear sense of what we're really looking at and what the asks should be. So if you can, please do get on a bus or drive yourself over to Albany on March 22nd. We have buses leaving from Brooklyn and Manhattan, and we think we're going to have a bus from Rochester and Syracuse. We'll know on Monday, but links to sign up for buses are on the Action Network. You can just check the box if you want to do that. There's also a carpool link. So if you wanted to drive into Albany, you can find other folks from your area using the carpool link. And that one is also on the Action Network site. Those are all of the highlights I have for today. I really hope that you can join us for this in-person action. We'll take ourselves away from the computers for a day, off the phones for a day, and just be all together in movement, in person together in the Capitol building, and sending a really loud and clear message to the legislature and the governor that we need to kick fossil fuels out of buildings, and these bills are going to do that. I think I'm passing it to Kim.
I think Andre's taking it.
Andre's taking it.
Yes. So Denise just said that we're going to be getting off the phones on the 22nd, but now I'm going to ask you to get back on the phones. This week on Food and Water Watch's dedicated Call Hochul line, the message is about the New York Heat Act. So let's all take a little time and make a call tonight. And then tomorrow, ask 2 friends or family members to also make calls. And this line will have our message through Sunday. So we're going to call Governor Hochul at 877-235-6537 and urge her to end subsidies for fossil fuel infrastructure and push to pass the New York Heat Act in the state budget. So let's all take a moment now to dial that number, or at least enter it into our phones. So I'm really glad that folks are making their calls and sharing with their groups. It's going to be great. We usually get several hundred calls in when we do this kind of an effort. So it's a very important way. Another way that we're going to be working on getting the message out is to do a call relay on the same day that we're doing the virtual advocacy day. So people can sign up at the link that I just popped into the chat for a time slot. We've got the whole day divided up into 5-minute time slots. So you'll choose a time that's convenient for you, and then you can make the call. When you've made your call, you will text the next person in line so that they know to make their call. So it's really a quick, fun, and effective way to get the message out to the governor. So sign up at the link, get all your friends and family to sign up too, and we'll let Governor Hochul know how important the New York Heat Act is to the people of New York State. And now I think I'm passing it to Kim, right?
Yes, I believe you are. Sorry, I just wanted to put a yay phone trees because before the internet, I remember we used to have phone trees for activism. So I just want to remind folks, this is our to-do list from tonight. So we want to register for the April 6th Power Hour, which will be this same monthly meeting that we organize every month for Renewable Heat Now. And it'll be on April 6th. And if someone could make sure that that gets in the chat, that would be great. And then we want to make sure that you all RSVP for the March 14th virtual lobby day, so we can put you into a meeting over Zoom with a legislator or their staff. A lot of times we'll meet with legislative directors, and that's even sometimes better because they're very influential. You don't have to worry if you never have experience with that. Please sign up, and all of us will be very, very supportive of anybody that's in that meeting with us. And then sign up for the call relay day that Andra just shared in the chat. Just put your name down in one of those slots. I will do that after this meeting. I haven't signed up yet, but I will. And then make sure to RSVP for Albany. After the virtual lobby day we all want to come together in person, and it seems like it's going to be a really fun day. Cheering people on, it always brings like happiness into our hearts to make sure we are, cheering on the folks that are helping us pass this essential climate legislation. So remember that Denise will be leading a prep session on March 15th. And then the buses or, drive or train or however you want to get there to Albany on March 22nd. And all of those links, I believe, should be in the chat right now. And just want to say thank you. Thanks for coming. You guys are awesome. We sort of got through all of our information in record time. So I am going to stop sharing my screen so we can all see each other's beautiful faces. And, we have now like 20 minutes left. Feel free if you want to earn 20 bonus minutes in your day. If you want to go back to life, go for it. Otherwise, we can stay here and answer questions. Or if you have any concerns or need clarification on anything, just pop your name in the chat and we can call on you, or if you want to just type your question in the chat, we can do that as well. It's so cool. After I was sharing my screen, I didn't realize how many awesome people were on here. This is great. Heather, you have a question? Go for it.
So I was a little worried about this because I thought it might cause some people to not support the bill. And that is, so if we put a 6% cap on the low and moderate income people, and let's say the utility has expenses that they then can't meet because they've got a cap from all of these people, because we have a lot of low and moderate income people in New York. So let's say they're not getting enough money then to pay their bills. Like, how is that going to be made up? Or, I mean, maybe I could just see some lawmakers saying, well, how's that difference going to be made up, and not supporting the bill because of that. If they think the state's going to have to give the utilities money, or are all the other ratepayers going to be charged more, or you see what I'm saying? Like, is there any provision for that in there, or?
Yeah, just to let you know now and that's a really good question, but, I want to offer something, that I think will help bring clarity to this, but, any of you like Avni, like if you have some like deeper analytical things on this, or Billy, please answer after me. But I just want to note that the corporate utilities right now are giant shareholder owned corporations, and they're making record profits now for their shareholders. They have the money. We need to be redistributing the wealth is really what it is. And, if we continue to allow, our the people of New York that are already suffering and so much debt, well, I know for a fact my organization targets National Grid a lot, and the CEO of National Grid makes $4,300 per hour. His name is John Pettigrew, and they are building so much stuff in order to pay shareholders out. So they can afford it. They can afford to have our bills like be capped at 6%.
Because that's an argument, that often businesses make. Well, we can't meet our expenses, or we have to pay all our people who work for us, and so on. You're limiting how much revenue we can generate. So
sure, yeah, big, executives really want us to think that we need to pay our fair share, but the truth is they are making record profits right now, and the fossil fuel industry is skyrocketing profits, and so I'll just leave it there, but I feel free anybody else to please pipe in with an answer.